And so I found myself, during my late teenage years, I was reading the Tao Te Ching, the Chuang Tzu, the Lao Tzu. I always had this affinity and respect for East Asian culture. And I had a really bad skateboarding accident. I actually smashed the left ball of my foot on the ground. I slipped off a curb and hit it pretty hard. And I went to see my medical doctor. They sent me to physio. Physio was expensive. I wasn't getting any better. And I remember talking to Dave about it. And he's like, man, he says, I'm in first year. You can see a last year student for like $20. And so again, like months and months and months of pain, hobbling around. So I showed him where I had pain and he put the needles in. After 2 acupuncture treatments, I've never had pain in the ball of my foot. I have a personal MO, modus operandi. Whoever lasts the longest wins. Many of the old guard martial artists, they will tell you it doesn't matter who gets to black belt. It doesn't matter who's better. It matters who's left. When you look at the end game, it's like who's left, who lasted the longest. Tenacity, patience, never say die attitude. So when people say, hey, how long is it going to take me to build a practice? It took me 6 years. It's okay to get a part-time gig to support your full-time gig. And it's okay to get a part-time gig at any point in time to support your full-time gig.
Hi everyone, this is Bora from Bonjour Friends. And today we have Kenton from TCM Graduate TV. Thank you so much for joining our interview.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Thank you. Welcome. Kenton, can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Kenton Sevcik. I'm a registered acupuncturist and traditional East Asian medicine practitioner. I graduated back in 2007 from the Alberta College of Acupuncture, located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I've been practicing for the last 15 years in Nova Scotia, Canada, which is on the East Coast, more or less north of Maine, and for the people that are in the United States.
Nice. So can you tell us what made you want to become an acupuncturist in the first place?
Well, it's all Dave Rose's fault. Dave Rose, if you're watching this is all your fault. So if we go back to when I was actually 14 years of age, I was, of course, living in my parents' basement, and there was a commercial that came on TV, and it was for a martial arts school. It was this elderly white-haired gentleman, and he defended himself successfully against ninjas on a bridge. At which point I woke up in the morning and I asked my mom to take me to a martial arts school. So I think I joined this martial arts school maybe about a month or so after Dave Rose had joined. And Dave and I became close friends. And we would be, most people at martial arts classes, I find them, they hide in the back, just like in school, right? You want to hide in the back. You don't want your teacher to ask any questions. But Dave and I, we wanted to become really, really good at Kung Fu. And so we were always at the front, and you're in a horse stance and you're punching, and I would drop a little lower and I'd look at Dave and he would look at me and he'd drop a little lower, and we just pushed each other and we became really close friends. And a couple other things happened where I think he got introduced to acupuncture through maybe a family friend or something like this. But I remember I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with my life outside of high school. I took some university courses. And the only thing at university that I really excelled at was actually Mandarin 101. Like when I took first year university courses, all the other stuff I just didn't really have a major affinity for, but I had a huge affinity for learning a little bit of Mandarin. And this was likely due to the fact that when I started in Kung Fu at the age of 14, then you go to look at like age 15, 16, 17, a lot of the Kung Fu movies started kind of coming out of China and getting ported over into English, and they would have subtitles and we would be able to watch them. And in the Kung Fu movies, you had the protagonist often had a bully. And then in order to overcome the bully, the protagonist would go find like a recluse in the woods, might be a drunkard, might not, but this person would teach them Kung Fu. But they wouldn't just teach them Kung Fu, they'd teach them a sense of morality. And how they would do this is they would use Taoist and Buddhist texts. And I really wanted to get good at Kung Fu, of course, right? I'm looking over at Dave. I want to get better at Kung Fu than Dave. And so I found myself, during my late teenage years, that I was reading the Tao Te Ching, the Chuang Tzu, the Lao Tzu. I was reading the sutras. And then I even dipped into a little bit of Sufi poetry. this stuff really, really spoke to me. So I wanted my Kung Fu to be good. And I saw these people in the movies studying these books, and I wanted to be as good as them. And so I always had this affinity and respect for East Asian culture. And that kind of led me to where, my buddy Dave says, "Hey, I think I'm going to Chinese medicine college." And I was like, "That's cool." He says, "I don't even know where to find one." And he wasn't too internet savvy. I mean, we're talking late 90s, kind of thing. And the internet's still kind of new. And so I said, we'll just jump on the internet. And I had an affinity for computer stuff. So anyways, jump on the internet, find this acupuncture school, get Dave signed up. So then he's in his first year of acupuncture, and I'm still doing my thing. I'm skateboarding. I love skateboarding. I love Kung Fu. And I had a really bad skateboarding accident. I actually smashed the left ball of my foot on the ground. I slipped off a curb and hit it pretty hard. And I was hobbling around for months and months and months. And I went to see my medical doctor. They sent me to physio. Physio was expensive. I wasn't getting any better. And I remember talking to Dave about it. And he's like, "Man," he says, "I'm in first year. You can see a last year student for like $20. Go see this guy. His name's Dongjun Kim. He's a Korean guy. He's practicing. He's so good. You go see this guy." So I paid $20, and I thought that was a great price because at the time I'd been shelling out so much money for physio. And I went and I paid Dongjun Kim the clinic. I paid the clinic because he was in his last year, he was doing his practicum. I came in and he's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "The ball of my foot sore." He's like, "Okay." He says, "Do you have any other problems?" I'm like, "That's it." As an acupuncturist now, I can see like his reasoning, be like, "That's it? You just like want me to put like 2 or 3 needles in the ball of your foot?" So I showed him where I had pain, and he put the needles in. And so again, like months and months and months of pain, hobbling around, not being able to enjoy my time at my job at work, that I had my part-time job. The short of it is, after 2 acupuncture treatments, I've never had pain in the ball of my foot. But still, even though that happened, I didn't think that this was a career for me, right? I just thought like Dave's doing his thing, and I didn't really want to step on his toes and all this kind of stuff. And so I went and did a few other things. I went and did like computer technician stuff because I really like computers. But this is like the year, like now 2001, and the tech sector bubble burst. And so I couldn't find much work. I went from making, maybe like $25 an hour. Now I'm making, $7 an hour. I wasn't making a lot of money. And I was lamenting to Dave, and I was like, "Man, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, I don't know what I want to do for a career." And this is where it's all Dave's fault. He says, "You're being a complete idiot." And I said, "What do you mean I'm being a complete idiot?" He's like, "Man," he's like, "we did Kung Fu together. We've done everything together." He says, "When I said I was going to Chinese medicine college, I thought you were going to come with me." He's like, "You're supposed to go to Chinese medicine college like I did." I was like, "Right." And I said, "But it only treats pain." He's like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "Wait." He's like, "Go meet with the dean of the college." So he set me up with a meeting with the dean of the college. And then I was completely blown away that I could treat like all these medical conditions with Chinese medicine. And I signed up. And that's how I ended up getting into acupuncture and Chinese medicine. It started with traditional Chinese martial arts, and then having an affinity and respect and love for Asian culture. And then it's Dave's fault.
We have to meet Dave.
You have to meet Dave. I call Dave the original Kung Fu brother. He's not big on social media, but if you ever want to interview him, I'm sure we can set it up. So Dave actually just recently moved his family to Israel to live and practice acupuncture in Israel. And he's also studied a little bit in person and online with Jimmy Chang, like world-class, like herbalist and stuff like that. So even though I learned, herbology was a big part of my education, but I feel like where I got the strength of my education was acupuncture. And so I still practice a little bit of herbs, of course. Most of the patients in this aging population, they have more interest in acupuncture, but there are times when I prescribe and I defer like any like hardcore herbal questions. They go to Dave, and he helps me out. He's a genius. He's just full of energy.
Anyway, if you can
nothing but love.
Thanks, with Dave.
Thanks, Dave, the original Kung Fu brother. He got me into acupuncture and Chinese medicine.
Interesting. Okay. So We want to ask you, how did you start your acupuncture practice and how did you start your acupuncture business?
So it's a good question. With a hope and a prayer, I moved from Calgary, Alberta to Musquodoboit Harbor, Nova Scotia. It is like 5,000 kilometers away, roughly 3,000 miles away. I moved to a province that I'd never seen before. I moved into a small community of 5,000 people. And this, I just really believed that it was going to work out. I got to this community and there was only one place to rent in this small community. It was a little 330 square foot unit. The rent was like $550 a month. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I bought a big sign and put it out front and I opened the doors and I sat in my clinic and nobody came. And this is basically how I did it. I didn't know anything about business in terms like my mom ran the books for my dad's construction company my whole life. My dad ran his own construction company for a long time. My mom was a teacher. So I kind of joke, like, of course I was going to be a teacher and run my own business at the same time, because that's what I got from my parents. However, I didn't know too much about business. So I thought to myself, who knows about business is actually an accountant. An accountant probably knows a lot about business. So I land in this small town. I'm starting to get the clinic already. I had to do some drywalling and that sort of thing to kind of make it my own. And I called a couple of accountants up and I talked to this one guy, James Harnish, and I said, hey, I don't know anything about running a business. Can you help me? I'll even pay you for your time. He's like, you're not going to pay me for anything. Come down to the house. He had a home-based business and he just laid it out for me. He's like, all right, so the first thing you need to do is call the government of Canada and you have to get a business number. Then you have to get a general sales tax number. And then you have to call the Royal Bank and you have to set up a business bank account. And that will allow you to get a business debit machine where you can take debit and credit and da 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 da. And you just kind of like walked me through all these steps. And so when I don't know what to do, I think about who does, and then I generally reach out for help. So another part of this story is that, so I was practicing in a small town. The city center of like Halifax and Dartmouth is about a 45-minute highway drive out of this small town into the city center. And I went and I met with a senior acupuncturist who'd been in practice in Halifax, Nova Scotia for years and years and years, Frank Tausig. And he gave me a treatment and I was kind of lamenting to him. I said, it's kind of hard to make ends meet working in my clinic in Musquodoboit Harbor with a community of 5,000 people. And, he had some needles in me. He had Ren 17 in, so that might've done it. But he said, most people in this province, they are more successful when they split their time. Like they do maybe 2 days in one clinic and then 2 or 3 days in another clinic. That's like maybe 45 minutes to an hour away. He says, most people have a success, that sort of thing. And I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way I need to do that because I'm going to be a success story living where I am and practicing where I am. But of course, like a couple more weeks goes by and things are tough. It's hard to make ends meet, and I ended up looking for a place to practice. And I actually went to this chiropractic clinic and I worked there for about 9 months. And that was an interesting learning curve as well, because I found out very quickly how people can actually end up like taking advantage of you. So we were all on a 60-40 split. So 60% for the practitioner, 40% for the owner. And over that 9 months, things had really started to morph and shift and change, where he was changing our split. So he was going to take 3% off of us. So it was going to be like 57-43. He was bringing in this management company from Toronto, Ontario to manage like how his billing was, to how his trash was being taken out, but we all had to pay for it. He wanted to come into work in a button up with a tie, and he wanted us all to start wearing scrubs. So he was sending this kind of message that like we were beneath him. And then he started lying to everybody and saying that, I don't know why you have a problem with this, Kenton, because so-and-so doesn't. And meanwhile, we're all friends, we're all practitioners, and we all get along. And we'd say, hey, he's saying this. And well, he told me you were okay with it. Well, he told me you were okay with it. And so a big chunk of us actually left. And I ended up working with a naturopathic doctor who was working under him. and she started her own clinic, and that's where I spent probably 8 or 9 years out of her practice before I work in another multidisciplinary clinic now, but that was really, really good. So, I mean, hopefully that kind of answers the question. I mean, how did you start your business? I say on a hope and a prayer, and just kind of like wading through the mud, just like maybe a lot of people. There are definitely, my journey's not everyone's journey. There's definitely practitioners that I've met. They've been like in practice for a year or two, and they landed a sweet gig and they're seeing 30 patients a week right out the gate. That chiropractor actually fed me a ton of clientele when I first started, because I was like the new great thing. And then he hired another massage therapist, and then that person became the new great thing. And then he stopped feeding me. And then I watched my roster kind of drop off. And there were so many amazing learning curves in that first like couple of years of practice. So I had my own practice where I answered my phone. I had to deal with all customer service relations. And I also had to give the acupuncture and clean the toilets, to working in a multidisciplinary clinic with 5 other practitioners and learning how to kind of manage those relationships. And yeah, so just over the years, it's just been a lot of trial and error. Yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's I am following your TCM Graduate TV on your Instagram account, and I feel like because of those experience, you have so many like experience, try and error. The advice that you're giving out to students or practitioners are very good. And I think everyone should hear about that, know about you, what you're doing. So do you have any advice for those who want to build a business in acupuncture field, or those who are already practicing in acupuncture clinic? Do you have any advice for them?
I always start this answer off with, my journey is not your journey. So my advice may not apply. Patience. That's the number one thing. I mean, I have a personal modus operandi. Whoever lasts the longest wins. And I have, as I've mentioned before, I have a martial arts background, and many of the old guard martial artists, the people that, are 60, 70 years old, and they're still training karate, they're still training kung fu, they're still training Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they will tell you it doesn't matter who gets to black belt. It doesn't matter who's better. It matters who's left. When you look at the end game, it's like who's left, who lasted the longest. And I hate to say it, but I really feel that tenacity, patience, never say die attitude, playing the long game, however long that is. I'm 15 years in, and I have had to get a part-time job 3 times in 15 years. And for somebody to hear that, they might say, well, you're not very successful, right? You're not seeing 50 patients a week, and you're not making $200,000 a year, and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And cool, if that's not, what you would adhere to success, doesn't bother me. I don't care. But I'm playing the long game, and I'm really trying to figure this out. I'm really trying to muddle through the mud, and I feel like everything is just like a mixing board, and I'm just trying to refine the knobs, but you're refining the knobs at the same time that the world keeps changing. So number one thing is patience. It actually took me 6 years. So when people say, hey, how long is it going to take me to build a practice? It took me 6 years. I have an Instagram friend. It took him like a year. He's full, right? But he's in Toronto. I was in a small town in Nova Scotia. I don't know what to tell you. So it took me 6 years, but I had to get a part-time job. So these are my general suggestions. It's okay to get a part-time gig to support your full-time gig. And it's okay to get a part-time gig at any point in time to support your full-time gig. Because we've got a few different things that have happened in the last 15 years, if we haven't noticed. So first things first, I always say, if I was going to go into the sock making business, so let's say I had a job where I was making, X amount of money and I worked 40 hours a week. And I said to Bora, I said, listen, I'm going to go make socks for a living. The socks with the funny sayings on them with like pugs and cats and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And you're like, and you're a really supportive friend. And you say, Kent, that's a really great idea. I say, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy the sock making machine. I'm sure there is one. I'm going to buy the sock making machine. I'll buy the laptop. I'm going to hook it all together, and I'm quitting my job on Monday. And you would say to me, you are crazy, right? If we're friends and you're supportive, but you might pump the brakes on it. Okay, wait, maybe you should like make socks on the side. And then when your sock business gets really popular and you start getting your socks in stores, then you can cut back your hours. Then when you're making socks full time and you're making $100,000 a year making socks, then you can quit your job. That's what you would tell me. But the funny thing is that for most of us, when we graduate from Chinese medicine college, we are entrepreneurs. We're self-employed. It's done. Whether we're contracted out or whether you're just an entrepreneur, there's nothing you can do about it. So my biggest thing for everybody is I'd let them know, listen, if people look to me and they say, oh, Kenton's pretty successful, he does a lot of cool stuff. Cool, because what I want to tell you is that Mr. Successful over here has gotten a part-time job 3 times. So it's okay to get a part-time gig to support your full-time gig, especially in the beginning when you're going to go from part-time sock maker to full-time sock maker, part-time acupuncturist to full-time acupuncturist till your roster fills up. It's okay to get a part-time gig after a pandemic. It's totally okay. It's okay to get a part-time job. So when the borders open up and everybody can travel and nobody comes to see you in the summertime because they've been cooped up for 2 years. And all of a sudden, like your summer roster was healthy. It's been healthy like your whole year. You don't really dip in the summer. No big deal. All of a sudden, everybody's traveling. They travel July. They travel August. They even travel into September. And they don't even come back into your clinic till October. It's okay to get a part-time job. So patience, play the long game. That's the best advice I can give everybody. I'm going to be the one to just say like, oh, wow, Kent, how did he do it? How did he practice for like 50 years or something like this? It's like just playing the long game, right? Mm-hmm. That's all I'm doing. Yeah. And over the years, you just keep compounding more and more and more and more experience. And you have to tweak the knobs less. There's less volatility in your business over a long period of time.
Wow, that's really great advice. So do you have any advice for students who are attending acupuncture school right now in general life lessons or?
Yeah, I think, and again, my journey is not your journey, but as I went through Chinese medicine college and I spoke to the instructors that taught me, there seems to be something that happens as we go through school. So when, let's say we've got like a 4-year program, which is kind of standard here in Canada. Like sometimes it's a 4-year smushed into a 3, sometimes it's a 5-year, but let's just say it's 4 years. So during kind of the first year, there's this insatiable appetite. Oh, I got to learn about this Chinese medicine. It's so foreign. You're struggling to learn the terms. You're like, heart qi deficiency. Does that mean that person has a physical heart problem? No, wait, you need to take that, put it over here. We'll bring that back in a little bit, but it's just so new and exciting. And then as you start to move into your second year, it's usually still pretty new and exciting because in the first year, if you can get through like all the ologies, I always call the ologies, right? Biology, microbiology, biochemistry, pathology, all the ologies. You can get through them all, and then you start doing the Chinese medicine stuff. You made it. You feel like you made it. Second year is like acupuncture point, herbs, herbal pairs. Like there's just so much information. As you move into third year, things start, and then you start doing clinical observation. And then as you move into your kind of final year, something that's very interesting that happens is all of a sudden, it's like somebody flicks a switch and we become know-it-alls. And we say, you know what? I'm going to go to this other school because they're teaching real Chinese medicine. That actually happened. So I was like in first and second year, and some final year students, they got their knickers in a twist and they figured that the way that we were being taught TCM style acupuncture was not the way that it should be taught. And they were going to leave the school, the longest running best school in Calgary, Alberta, in Alberta period, ACA TCM. And they were going to go to some school in British Columbia. cool, whatever. But I was doing clinical observation, and I heard them lay into Benny Shu, our president at the time, and just like, we're going to a real school. You don't know what you're doing. This one's devoid of all spirituality, all this kind of stuff. They just lost their mind. But I would see this as a pattern. And then I would talk to Benny, I'd talk to Cole, I'd talk to Dennis, I'd talk to Alex Audet, and I'd say, what the heck's going on? And they're like, listen, it's like this like final yearitis. You get into the final year and you get this inflated sense of whatever. And this is where people, partially rightfully so, they start dabbling into like Hicks and Hicks 5-element acupuncture. They start dabbling into Mikio Sankei's esoteric acupuncture. They start dabbling into maybe like Tan or Tongue or something like this. That's cool, but you kind of need to finish what you started. So I guess I would say for like anybody and everybody getting into like your final year, you stayed curious in year 1, you stayed curious in year 2, you stayed curious in year 3, and then year 4, you're a jerk. No, don't do that. Stay curious. And so that's probably the best thing I could say, is that stay curious, as well as, finish what you started. You started in TCM style. Now, let me back up for just a second. I've been practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu. Shout out to Bruce Lee. I've been practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu for many, many years. I've been practicing martial arts for 28 years. One of the best advice that was ever given to me was stay narrow, but go deep, not go wide and stay shallow. Something that I decided to do in my early years, because I got bombarded with all this stuff too. I was the president of my class. I was the president of student council for like 3 or 4 years that I went to school, or whatever it was. In terms of student council, I think it was like the full time that I went to school. I don't think anybody else wanted to do it. So, but I was always being interacted with from students, and they're like, "Oh, you got to check this out. You got to check this out. You got to do this. You got to do that." And we get a lot of that. So, in other industries like the chiropractic industry, they have a lot of toys. Oh, you need to buy this gait scanning machine. You need to buy this machine, this heat scanning machine for the back. You got to do all this stuff, and it'll increase your OVA and your PVA. They always say, right? But we don't have that. We don't have too many tools. We've got different things. But so what we have is styles. We have like styles and systems. And so a lot of times the way the styles and the systems are being kind of sold to us is with a fear-mongering mentality. It's like, oh, that TCM style, it's kind of low level stuff. But this like esoteric, it's higher level. It's like you get better results with it. Oh, the esoteric's pretty cool, but you should check out this 5-element stuff that I've been doing. Like this is like super high level. I need all these like kidney points up here. Like it's amazing. So it starts becoming like a fear-based decision. It's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know if like LI11's that good of an acupuncture point to clear heat. Maybe I should be doing like all this other stuff. And my goal is to kind of tell people that you should actually stay narrow. You went to school for TCM style. If you wholeheartedly want to do something else, then you're going to stay narrow and go deep on that. But typically we don't. Typically we dabble. And especially when we get out of school, we dabble and we don't get great results. So you went to school for TCM style. TCM style kicks ass. It works really, really well. I did it wholeheartedly solely for 13 out of the 15 years of my career. And I stayed narrow and I went deep. So that's my advice there. So because of my martial arts upbringing, if you will, and because of the lessons that I've learned there, that's another thing that I'd recommend that students do. Finish what you started. You started doing TCM style. And second of all, stay narrow, go deep with TCM style, make it prove itself to you. So it's like, if you learn that LI4, LI11, and DO14 clear heat, every single time you see your heat, you better use some of those acupuncture points. Spleen and stomach 40, drain damp and transfer phlegm respectively, but they're best friends. They always hang out together. If you see damp, spleen and stomach 40. If you see phlegm, spleen and stomach 40. And it's going to work. And so you need that feedback. You need that, like, every single time I see damp, I'm going to spleen and stomach 40 this human. And then you do it, and then you get the result, and then you get that feedback, and then you get the confidence, and you're like, so there's so you start taking the fear out of, or the self-doubt out of it through that process.
Well, that's really great advice, because our Boncho friends, our mission is also stay true and then stay to the foundation. And we really believe that knowing the foundation is really important to start. And then you have to have a really good foundation to be good and be great. So I think that's,
100%.
yeah. So we have one last question. Can you tell us more about your membership program that you have it on your website? I think it's called the Strengthen of TCM.
Yeah, that's a great question. Over my career, I've had the opportunity to do live seminars, maybe get hired for live seminars, maybe I put them on myself for acupuncture associations, for naturopathic doctor conferences. Oftentimes I put on my own stuff, whether it be online or live, and I put a ton of energy and effort into these things, and then they're kind of gone. And I felt kind of sad about that. And I felt that there might be a better way to go about doing things in terms of getting people access to the stuff that I do. So that's what the Strength of TCM membership is. It's two things. Number one, it's a bunch of recorded video content. So stuff that I've taught over the years, whether it be like tongue diagnosis, pulse diagnosis, foundations of Chinese medicine, the heavy hitting acupuncture points that I use in the clinic, all that kind of stuff. That's all there. If I did a seminar, I broke my collarbone at jiu-jitsu about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and I successfully used TCM style acupuncture and the foundations of acupuncture and herbs to help heal it. And so I did a seminar on that and I threw that up there. So there's a lot of video content up there. And as I continue to make things, I need a place to put them. And so that's the place for them. So that's the one kind of prong approach to it. The other thing is that there's 10 Zoom calls a year. And people can ask questions. If they can't make it to the Zoom call, I just email them the Zoom link and say, hey, do you have any questions? I answer them on there. Then I do a mini presentation. This past year, I've really focused on communication. So improving communication between practitioner and patient. My plans for next year are more kind of like boundary stuff and more kind of business sense. And that'll be the plan for next year. So we meet one night a week, one night a month. So they get 10 Zoom calls a year and they get access to me. They can ask me anything from hard cases to patient practitioner dynamics to practitioner dynamics, working in multidisciplinary clinics, etc. So, I mean, most of my stuff is geared towards recent graduates, similar to what you're trying to do with Boncho TV. I just feel like the recent graduates need common sense, no nonsense, practical advice when it comes to building a practice, when it comes to tough cases, when it comes to practitioner patient dynamics. And that's just been my goal ever since I started jumping on YouTube and doing my thing and selling my workbooks and my digital download PDFs and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and the other big thing is that I know as a recent graduate, I didn't have a ton of money. So this stuff is $8 US a month. It's going to remain $8 US a month. And same thing with my digital downloads. They're $5, they're $8, that type of stuff. I just want people to have access to this. And I know you're all sharing it with your friends anyways. So, but yeah, that's the Strength of TCM. And that's where like kind of the logo came from. It's like a couple of muscles with the Strength of TCM because it's that whole idea of staying narrow and going deep. It's like there is strength in TCM style acupuncture. There's strength in 5-element. There's strength in like Japanese, palpatory style. There's strength in everything. That's not, but in terms of what people are going to school for and what I hope them to have confidence in. So my tagline is helping you gain confidence in the skills you went to school for. And that's kind of that whole shtick about, again, staying narrow and going deep. So that's what the Strength of TCM is all about. And that's what the membership's all about.
That's really great. Thank you so much for doing that. I think a lot of students will appreciate that. Really, that's a great tools out there that students can get access to. $8, that's really affordable, really affordable price. Thank you. One more thing, as I was hearing this, can you share any of cases that you went through, like any tough cases with patients? Because recently, like a lot of colleagues, they see patients, but sometimes patients are complaining and then saying that they're not getting good service from the acupuncturist, even though they try their best. There's always complainers. So how would you approach to those patients?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a big part of it is staying curious. So what I typically do in all cases is I point the finger back at myself. So I really want to point the finger back at myself and analyze what I'm doing in my approach. So that's kind of like the key thing for any kind of tough cases, I guess we would say.
Mhm.
The other thing, not to tell everybody to concentrate on TCM style acupuncture and then go off on a tangent, but just to give some tools. So a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago, I'd say, I reconnected with a clinical supervisor of mine, Alexander Audet. So Alexander Audet, he actually went to Japan to learn a martial art in its native country. And he decided to go for a year. And he quickly realized that a year wasn't enough. So he came back to Canada and he went back. And as he was learning this martial art, of course, they were using pressure points and all these different things. And he would ask questions, and his teacher would kind of like slough him off and say, if you want to learn about that, you got to go to acupuncture school. And in Tokyo, there's the Beijing School of Chinese Medicine, Tokyo branch. And so he went to Chinese Medicine College in Tokyo. Now, in Japan, there's these things, I believe they're called shugyos. They're like study groups. And a study group is where you kind of get your master's or your PhD kind of unofficially. It's where you really hone your skills. And there's a gentleman by the name of Haru Matsumoto. Haru Matsumoto was an electrical engineer, and he lost his sight as he aged. And in Japan, acupuncture has always been a blind profession. So oftentimes, if you were born blind, it was thought that you should be a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, or a musician. So he was of kind of this old thinking. So he went into acupuncture. So this was Alexander Audet's teacher. And I had Alexander Audet as a clinical supervisor, and he taught me how to needle points like stomach 1 and stomach 9 and deep needling and Jing Bai Lao and stuff like that, extra head neck 15, and really gave me the confidence in my needle skills. But here I am kind of like 13 and a half years into my practice, and I was having a couple tough cases. And I reconnected with him, and I asked him, hey, do you think you can help me with these tough cases? And he said, sure. And then, of course, he answered me with his Haru Matsumoto deep tissue lymphatic acupuncture goggles on. And I didn't understand. And then I thought, oh, right, you practice this other style. And then I was in trouble. Okay. Because I'm practiced, 13 and a half years, TCM style, hardcore, all my content's about TCM style, been very successful about it. But I had a couple tough cases. And I knew right then that I couldn't have one foot in and one foot out. So I said, and again, right, stay narrow, go deep instead of going wide. So I stopped running 2 rooms of TCM style acupuncture, and I only see one patient at a time, and I only use one needle at a time. And for the last year and a half plus, or whatever it's been, I have been doing only deep tissue lymphatic acupuncture, Haru Matsumoto's kind of like style. And so with all that, the reason why I tell you all that is so that we can get back to like, what do you do when it's a tough case? So something that I've been telling practitioners to do a little bit more of is before you use your needles, I want you to use your hands. And something that I think that's been lost. So oftentimes in Japan, according to Alex, you would learn massage therapy and you learn shiatsu and then you learn acupuncture. And we kind of do the same, right? We kind of learn the theory, we learn a little bit of tuina, and then we learn acupuncture. But something has to be said for kind of maybe the gentle sweeping motion of shiatsu versus the vigorous tuina. Just going to throw that out there. Both are fantastic. But where I'm going with this is, let's say we have a patient and they have pain, or they have, let's say it's even simpler, lack of grip strength. Lack of grip strength. You'd be like, okay, lack of grip strength is probably like carpal tunnel, all that kind of stuff. So you feel the forearm, and you start needling, PC6, PC7, PC4, whatever the case may be. And maybe you don't get great results, but you need to spend more time feeling the whole forearm. So we talk about in Chinese medicine, treat above to treat below to treat above, treat in front to treat the back to treat the front. And so I would just really tell everybody that before you use your needles, use your hands, because you might discover that, like, okay, so, maybe I do this PC6, PC7, I don't get results. But then by using your hands and checking kind of like the whole zone of where obviously this grip strength comes from, we discover that from LI10 all the way down to triple warmer or triple energizer 5 is just all gummed up and tense. And whether you subscribe to needle retention or not, doesn't matter. But if you soften all that stuff up and then you take those needles out, probably quite immediately, they're going to get their grip strength back. So if I could say anything in regards to like tough cases, I would highly recommend that people, before you use your needles, use your hands. Here's one more actual thing that I discovered. Our needles are very, very thin, very, very small. Hip joint is very, very large. So if you have somebody who comes and says, I've got hip pain, maybe they've got hip bursitis, what are you going to do? You're going to put a needle there, Asha, wherever there's a pain, there's a point. It's probably not going to do enough. You're going to have to check the whole zone. You're going to have to check from like GB 27, 28 through to 29, back through to 30. You're going to have to check over that hip joint. You're going to have to check down the IT band. You're going to have to check that whole kind of like zone, all that stuff that attaches. And you're going to have to use your hands. You're going to have to use your patient as a barometer for success, for finding this stuff out. Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Somewhere between does it hurt here, the Asha points, and somewhere between I actually feel tension there. And I think that we've really gotten away from using our hands. TCM style is very effective. If you tell me, Kenton, I got a patient and they've got a wind cold, I could just tell you blanketly, I could just say, oh yeah, so just do like a GB20, do an LI4, lung 7, and a triple warmer floss, and maybe a stomach 36, and it's done. But what if I told you that when the patient has their head in the headrest, you should actually check with your hands for tension at the occiput? If GB20 and DO16 and UB10 used to be used for a lot for like wind cold stuff back in the day. But what if we like actually checked what kind of tension is back here? And we actually took the time to soften it. I bet we get better results than just kind of like GB20 kind of done. Mm-hmm. So big roundabout way to say, before you use your needles, use your hands.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, that was our last question. Kenton, thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun. If you ever need me to do this again, you just holler.
Yes, we will. Let's do it. And then we need to interview Dave, your friend.
I'll get you his info. But yeah, okay. It'd be fun to get his perspective on things too.
Nice. Okay, thank you everyone for watching, and if you like this content, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions, please comment down below. We'll leave his information on our comment. Thank you, and see you guys next time.